So here you are. James Cameron's been developing this movie uh, at 20th Century Fox. The budget has reached what then is 20 years ago an astronomical 110 million. You're the head of the studio. I know now it's nothing, right? The lunch bill. You're the head of Paramount, and you hear that maybe they want a partner on this. How do you jump in then, and what is the process of your thinking?
So the first thing you do is you have to read the script, because no matter what, to me, the script is the most important thing. If there isn't a good script, I don't think you can make a good movie. And in this case, the cast was not 100% set, but the director was. And then you have to be sure you believe in the director. So when I read the script, I thought it was brilliant. I actually thought it was one of the greatest love stories I'd ever read. And it was also, in the case of Rose, a female empowerment movie. Because at the end, when you see what her life had been. So those were themes that really, really appealed to me. And so I knew I loved the screenplay. And I thought James Cameron was a genius, and he is. He's a genius. And I thought that he could do extraordinary things that hadn't been done with water, with visuals, whatever. And so then you call, I was the head of the studio, you call the other head of the studio. In this case, it was 20th Century Fox, and it was Peter Chernin and Bill Mechanic. And you tell them why you are the very, very best place compared to anybody else, and why you should be the partner, and why you would be a great partner, and on and on and on. And then you have everybody in your company call everybody else at every other level that you can possibly get to. And you know, if you can get Sumner Redstone to call Rupert Murdoch, you do. I don't think we did, but you do, you know, and that's what you do. And you're like in a bidding war. And eventually we got it, you know. And then you have to, there's a period of time after you have what you call a handshake deal that you get to vet the budget. And we got to vet the budget, and we had real concerns because the budget had, and I'm not sure about the numbers, but you've done your research, so you'll be exactly accurate. I think it was about $20 million that they had in for special effects. And I knew that was wrong. Here we were making a movie that was going to be $100 million, which was, you know, the most expensive movie practically at that time. I mean, it's shocking to me how the costs have escalated. It certainly was the most expensive movie we had ever made. And here you were making this movie, and they only had $20 million in for special effects, and they were shooting with water. And Waterworld had happened. So you knew that the numbers were wrong. So we sent our production manager over, and we said, we don't think these numbers are right. We think the budget has to go up. And there was a lot of tension between the two production managers, and then a lot of tension between all the executives. And they stood by their numbers. And they said, well, what's the worst you think this movie can go to? Let's agree on what the worst is. And I remember saying, I think 135 is the worst that I think it can go to. But that's how off we thought the numbers were, like $35 million more. And don't quote me exactly on these numbers, but generally that's the take of it. And they said, great, it'll never go to that, so we'll cap you on your investment. So I have to say that we slept very well at night when the picture went to $200 million
Wow.
because we were capped. But in the end, it turned out great for everybody because the picture was so phenomenally successful that everybody made, you know, a great deal of money off of it, and more equally as important, the film was an artistic masterpiece. I mean, it really is and continues to be. I remember, I believe it was Peter Chernin saying to one of the press that they had actually made more money than we had on it. And I said, well, that's not true. We're 50-50 partners. And I remember going to John Dolgen, and he was always doing financials, and he had probably 25 financials. And they went to, you know, if the picture does, you know, 200 million, if the picture does 300 million. I mean, numbers that nobody had ever heard of at that time. And what did the picture do, $1.2 billion, something like that? Again, I don't want to be held to these numbers, but he never did a P&L that went to $1 billion because no film had ever done $1 billion. And in fact, at a certain point, they ended up getting a bigger piece because they had taken, you know, such a greater risk in the equity investment in the film. But, you know, that's a high-class problem. That's all I can tell you. Everybody did extremely well, and James Cameron had given up all of his points, and we restored all of his points, and everybody did very well. So it has a happy ending for everybody.